And we missed her for most of last week. She was on a mission, but it's great to have her back. So welcome to the show to Talk's fabulous international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Hi, Isabel.
Hi there. And as you were reading out that list of stories, I'm getting excited about all we've got to chew over. But I'm also just disbelieving. I mean, some of the stories that we're talking about, you know, the first cousin marriage in particular, these are just jaw-dropping decisions, aren't they? Absolutely jaw-dropping.
What the NHS is doing, and it's given this sort of eulogy about how first cousin marriages are very good for community harmonious relations, how it's good for, you know, Muslim communities' economic welfare and so on and so all this social, economic and communal good things, they say, come of first cousin marriages. This is the NHS advice. But here's the fact, and we'll talk about this later. The fact is that a first cousin marriage, intermarriage as they call it, Pakistani Muslims are very keen on this, but Muslims generally support first cousin marriages. It's not illegal in this country, by the way. A lot of people say it should be, but it's not. But here's the statistic, that a child born of an intermarriage, a first cousin marriage, is literally twice as likely to be born with birth defects than a child born of, shall we say, a normal marriage. That's the facts. Twice as likely, and yet the NHS says, well, you know, yeah, but, you know, it's very good for the community. The Muslims like it. It's prioritising a kind of wokery over medical safety for children. It's unbelievable. We'll talk about that later. Let's kick off with something that is far more believable, but nevertheless extremely annoying. Keir Starmer, he just cannot learn the lesson, can he? A year or so ago, he was busy calling all people who protested about the migrant crisis in the wake of the Southport killings far right. There may have been some far-right demonstrators, but the police investigation into those riots proved, beyond all doubt, that the vast majority of those rioters were not far-right. Keir Starmer just made that up because it fits in with his political worldview. Now he's off again. Because Nigel Farage and millions of British citizens, Reform supporters as well as other British citizens, are extremely worried about something called indefinite leave to remain. That is this bizarre system whereby if you come to this country, be it legally, illegally, stick around illegally, stick around after your visa ends, whatever, manage to stay here by whatever means for 5 years. That's like the magic marker moment. Oh, you did 5 years. You can stay forever. So basically, if anyone, any migrant, any foreigner, no matter how they got into this country, manages to stick around for 5 years, at that point, almost automatically, Britain gives them indefinite leave to remain. They can stay for the rest of their lives. Now, that is a slapdash system that is almost bizarre. It's bizarre. Nigel Farage says we've got to do something about it. You know, we've got to stop just automatically giving people indefinite leave to remain. And look, we also ought to look at some of the people we've given indefinite leave to remain, you know, who've never worked, brought all their relatives over, are costing us a fortune with welfare. Maybe have a look at with their status. All he's essentially saying is that from now on, you know, after 5 years, 2 years, whatever, you know, by all means, let these people apply for indefinite leave to remain, but let's be a lot more strict about how many people we let to do it. Now, loads of people around the country, millions of people share that concern. You know, we have this Boris wave. Boris let in 3.8 million legal migrants who, over the next couple of years, will qualify for indefinite leave to remain, and that literally could cause a kind of welfare tsunami that could bankrupt this country. Nigel Farage is saying, well, we've got to do something about this. What's Starmer's response to that? He calls Nigel Farage racist, he calls the Reform policy racist, and effectively calls millions of Reform supporters and other concerned citizens racists. He just cannot get it through his head that this isn't good enough. Just because there are people out there who do not agree with his open borders policies, doesn't make them racist. And I think this will backfire on him badly. The mood in the country that this Prime Minister of ours has done it again and calling us all racist, far right racists. The mood in this country is very angry.
I genuinely couldn't believe my ears when I heard him saying this again. I mean, does this guy not have any awareness whatsoever of the impact that those sorts of words have on his own party's poll rating? I mean, this is very much like Brexit, isn't it? And it's also very much like, you know, what Hillary Clinton famously said about Trump supporters, a basket of deplorables. You know, this sort of language is so demeaning and insulting to millions, genuinely millions of people who have perfectly reasonable, legitimate concerns about the sheer number of people coming into our country. This isn't about nationalities, although as Julia Hartley-Brewer was saying earlier in her show today, you know, it is a fact that certain nationalities are linked to certain types of crime than other nationalities. That is simply a fact, and people can like it or not like it, but it's a fact. But in general, those who are concerned about immigration are not actually obsessing about skin color. What they're obsessing about is, number one, sheer quantity, volume, the actual number of people coming, number one. And number two, are those people net contributors or net liabilities? Are they adding to our economy and to the richness of our national life, or are they taking away from it? And I'm afraid the evidence is that, on balance, of those Boris Wave individuals, you know, they are not on average net contributors.
83% of them, Isabel, are not.
Yeah, so pretty overwhelming, really.
They're not workers. You know, so 83% of the Boris Wave have never contributed anything to this country. Many of them are allegedly studying at universities and whatever, but they've never worked and therefore never contributed. And when they qualify for indefinite leave to remain, not only will that be a bad thing for our welfare system, they'll start bringing all their relatives over as well. So literally people are worried, and for once I say literally correctly, literally people are worried that this could bankrupt the nation.
I mean, Keir Starmer, I'm genuinely mystified as to why it's so difficult for him to understand. I would like to ask him, where is your proof? Where is your evidence that people who are worried about this and angry about it are racist? Show me the evidence, because there is no evidence that they're racist. That is an assumption on the part of the Prime Minister. I'm afraid an awful lot in the Labour Party actually agree with it. And that is in large part driving more support for Nigel Farage. And why they can't see the connection between these two things, I don't know. But if they carry on in this vein, all they're doing is recruiting more reform supporters.
And do you want to know something, right? You know, people like you and me, quite a lot of politicians, Nigel Farage is very used to it. People like you and me are used to it. Julia's used to it. Mike Graham, because, you know, we are not exactly famous for our left-wing views. We may just be slightly right of centre in our worldview, our outlook. A lot of people call us racist. You're racist. You're racist. And they bandy that term around so much that it's become almost meaningless. Yeah. But here's the thing. Clearly, these Labour people, Starmer's crew, Keir's crew up at Liverpool, they're so trapped in their own little bubble, they think, oh, racist. If we call someone racist, that will completely ruin them. People will be against them then. They don't realise that they've undermined the very use of that term racist, because they throw it at anyone who doesn't agree with them, and that around the country people will not respond to this. But up at the Labour conference, they think we've cracked it. We've cracked it. We're going to call Nigel Farage and Reform racists. That'll ruin them. It will have the opposite effect. Honestly, they are pathetic victims of their own little bubble, aren't they?
It is absolutely pathetic. And how can you continue credibly to hurl those types of insults around at a party that has as its policy chief a Muslim, at a party that I know you're going to be interviewing later, that has many prominent people of different ethnicities, of different religions. I mean, come on, guys, is this really the best that you can throw at reform? Because if this is as good as it gets, you're out at the next election. It's actually embarrassing. This is juvenile politics. But what worries me is that they actually think this. It's not just that they think it will damage reform. It's that they genuinely believe it, because their little minds are incapable of coming up with anything that's more sophisticated by way of analysis.
That's exactly what it is, Isabel. You can imagine them, war gaming. Right, Nigel Farage reform, they rise and rise. They're so successful. They're winning all the polls by a country mile. They're making us look bad. How can we beat him? How can we attack him? How can we undermine him? Somebody, oh no, let's call him a racist. Yeah, it's pathetic. It is so pathetic, because when he calls Nigel Farage a racist, he calls millions of reform supporters racists, and he calls millions of other people who are very concerned about the migrant crisis racists as well. He has this thing about attacking his own electorate, and he can't seem to grow out of it.
It's completely mad, and it will do for them. And, I would say that it was actually effective some years ago. This smear actually cost Reform or Brexit Party candidates seats in other elections. It doesn't work anymore, because the evidence to the contrary is so completely overwhelming. There is not actual evidence that any key Reform figures are, quote, racist. And at the same time, there is overwhelming, breathtaking, staggering evidence for the reason for normal people, ordinary people, decent people to be worried about the scale of mass uncontrolled immigration. So this slur doesn't work. In fact, all it does is add to Reform's poll ratings. And I would be not at all surprised if next week's polls show Reform having gone up a little bit more.
And do you know what it really is? We've got to go to break now, Isabel, but these people, the Starmers of this world, these Labour halo polishers, when they go, "You're a racist," what they really mean is, "I'm not a racist. Aren't I wonderful?" It's halo polishing. It's virtue signalling. And as I just said, they've bandied it around for the past few years so much that they've undermined the power of calling someone racist. They've made the insult, the attack, almost meaningless, and that's why this pathetic attempt to undermine Reform, Nigel Farage and their migrant policies just will not work. The racism angle does not operate anymore. Funnily enough, though, when we come back, we're going to talk about Shabana Mahmood, who basically has come up with all these ideas to crack down on the migrant crisis, on the influx of migrants, which are pretty similar to Nigel Farage's ideas. So as I said in my monologue, it's like if Reform UK said we've got these ideas about cracking down on the influx of migrants and what to do about the crisis, that's immoral and racist. If Labour have pretty much the same ideas, that's saintly and moral. Again, it's just pathetic. We'll talk about that after this break. Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Yeah, Isabel, the Home Secretary, the not at all tough Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. I wish people would divest themselves. She's hard as nails, she's so tough. Even the Spectator magazine, the Bible of the right, this week had her all done up like a gangster, as if she was tough. She's not tough. You brought us that video of her handing out food parcels to migrants breaking into Greece from the Middle East and Africa. Oh, we've got food for them and all this sort of stuff. That's her 10 years ago. She won't leave the European Convention on Human Rights, so everything else she does is just piddling around the edges. If she's so tough, Why are we still putting migrants into 4-star hotels? Why are we still giving them free food, free accommodation, free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, free everything else? If she's so tough, why are we still doing that? So she's not very tough, but she is now resorting to reality TV style sound bites. She said about the small boats. She said this before her speech today at the Labour conference. Failure on the small boats is not an option. That's what they say on Big Brother. Failure's not an option. Let me tell.
They've already failed.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. As long as we continue to give migrants, illegal migrants, free accommodation, free food, free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, and so many more enticements, failure to stop the boats is not an option. It is a cast iron, guaranteed certainty. But here's Shabana pretending to be tough at the hilarious Labour conference in Liverpool today.
When people see small boats arriving on our shores, they see a country that has lost control. When they hear of widespread illegal working, undercutting British workers, they feel the system is rigged. And when they see crime, unchecked on unsafe streets, they feel fearful. This was the inheritance that the Conservatives left behind for us, and their current irrelevance is the price that they have paid. So it now falls to us to rise to this challenge. If we do not, our vision of an open, tolerant and generous country will wither. And where we fail, others will succeed.
Yeah, well, Shabana, you will fail because you don't want to leave the ECHR. Leaving the ECHR, Isabel, as I always say, look, it's not the cure-all. By leaving the ECHR, we won't magically, instantly solve our migrant crisis, but it is the essential stepping stone, bedrock move that we have to make. We have to start from there, then we can start making our own sovereign decisions without being overruled by a foreign court, which is what's happening at the moment. So she's suggesting today that there should be a good citizen test for all migrants coming in. You know, they must be able to speak English, they must have a completely crime-free record, no criminal record, and so on and so forth. The point is, they come in, they don't have any documents, you know. So have you ever committed any crime? Do you have a criminal record? Yes, I do. I'm a rapist and I'm a murderer. They're not likely to say that, are they? They're going to continue lying. So that's not going to work. But in this alleged crackdown, all she's doing is echoing the sort of things that Reform UK are saying. In other words, apart from the fact that Reform UK will leave the ECHR, in other words, as I said before the break, when Labour propose a migrant crackdown, it's saintly and moral. When Reform UK propose a migrant crackdown, it is immoral and racist. And by the way, her policies, one in, one out, going so well, aren't they? Just 895 foreigners crossed the Channel illegally on Saturday. One mega, not so small boat, this is a brand new kind of dinghy, had 125 people in it alone, and tragically one dinghy sank and 2 people drowned. That was on Saturday alone. So don't stand there, Shabana, and tell us that you're the one to do anything about the migrant crisis. Since you took over in September, it's hard to believe, but it's got a lot worse. This woman is being vaunted as the one who's going to do it. She's got no idea, has she?
Well, I mean, I might have sat up and listened to that speech from Shabana Mahmood had it been delivered a year and a half ago, for example. You know, had it been delivered before Labour came into office and did absolutely the square root of nothing whilst shouting endlessly about smashing the gangs, I might have had some sort of, I don't know, little sense of anticipation that something might change. But in actual fact, what's happened is under every indicator, the crisis has got worse. And I am so fed up and so bored of hearing left-wingers and Labour Party conference types wanging on about tolerance. I'm not feeling at all tolerant, and neither is most of the country. We're fed up of being tolerant. We're fed up of having our tolerance exploited, abused, totally and utterly misused. This fetishization of tolerance has led us where we are, actually. The whole kind of let's not be judgy about where someone's come from or what horrors they may have committed. Let's give them a cup of tea and wrap them in a warm blanket and put them in a top hotel. No, we are actually not feeling tolerant like that. What we want is a bit of judgment about whether the people coming in are going to be good for our country or not. And I'm afraid the vast majority of those who break the law and come over to our country in small boats are not really setting an example about how they plan to treat our hospitality.
So when she says failure on the small boats is not an option, that's a quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger's films, the Terminator movies. And the Home Secretary, as I say, really annoyingly, The Spectator, as edited by Michael Gove, who really ought to learn the nature of political opposition. No, Michael, we oppose Labour, you know what I mean? He puts her all over the front of her glasses and calls her the Terminator, this tough Home Secretary. The Terminator. Do me a favour. She's not going to terminate anything, is she? As long as she stays in the ECHR, nothing is going to happen.
I mean, warm words or punchy words are all that is. You know, what people care about is actions. I've seen all the gushing reports about her, you know, hard as nails speech and how she's striking all the right tones, a steely determination. None of that means anything to anybody. I don't care how steely she may look, how shiny, how professional, how moral, whatever you might want to say, from the stage of a Labour talking shop. What I want to see is things changing very tangibly, very obviously. Now, I will have respect for Shabana Mahmood if in a couple of months' time she finds that she is basically unable to do anything to stop the boats or anything else that she's set herself the target to do, and she resigns. Then I'll have some respect for her. But I confidently predict that will not happen. And she will just carry on periodically giving us steely words and nothing will change. Even old cautious Kemi Badenoch has finally realised that just maybe it might be an idea for the Tories to embrace a policy of leaving the ECHR. It's taken her about 2 years, but she's finally got there. If we don't leave the ECHR, nothing can be done. Of course, the ECHR is a sort of merry-go-round, all the fun of the fair for human rights lawyers like Keir Starmer. So we will never leave. So she has no plans, as I say. Let me ask the audience this. Look, this is where our tough talking Terminator Home Secretary stands on how she's going to tackle the migrant crisis, how she's going to stop it. She has no plans. She wants to stay in the European Convention of Human Rights, which means we will always be subordinate to a foreign court. So when our sovereign decisions are not to the likings of human rights lawyers, the case is taken to the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, and they invariably decide against us, and we have to do what we're told. So she wants to stay in that system. She wants to continue to give illegal migrants free, expensive accommodation in 4-star hotels. She wants to continue to give them free food. She wants to continue to give them free doctors. She wants to continue to give them free dentists. She wants to continue to give them free lawyers. Now, let me ask the audience, given that that's what she wants to do, how do you think she stands a snowball's chance in hell of solving the migrant crisis? So she's saying, I'm tough, I'm prepared to be unpopular, failure is not an option. Failure, as I say, with that set of policies, failure is not an option. Failure is a cast iron guarantee. Let me know what you think, folks. 03444 499 1000. When we come back, Isabel, I'm sure you're a massive fan of the new digital ID cards, because I'll tell you, apparently, according to Labour, there is growing public support
for Keir Starmer's Soviet-style brick cards. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. That is such a lie. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, it's time now. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Let's talk about ID cards. Isabel, you know, this Labour conference, I was watching it at home today with an increasing sense of real fury and frustration. You know, these people standing there, they're making all these speeches one after the other. Shabana Mahmood, Bridget Phillipson, David Lammy, worst of all, Rachel from Accounts, delivering these speeches, sort of assuring us that Labour have had a very, very good first year, fixing the foundations. All they seem to talk about, they've been told to go out with this set of buzzwords that they think will win us round to supporting them. One, of course, is reformer racists. The other is breakfast clubs. They all go, they've got free breakfast clubs at school. I don't even know what that is, but they're not free because taxpayers are paying for them. But they're all going out, we've delivered breakfast clubs. Oh, great. That's fantastic. So they're all their breakfast clubs and fixing the foundations. They don't realise that they go, we've been fixing the foundations, delivering breakfast clubs at school. They don't realise that fixing the foundations has become a national laughingstock. Everybody laughs when they say that, but they don't realise that in their cosseted little Westminster world. But their worst gaslighting is their way of justifying what nobody in this country wants, these Soviet-style brick cards, digital ID cards issued by the government. You'll have a state number. And whatever they say, you will need this. They say it's to make sure that migrants don't work illegally. Rubbish. It won't make any difference to that at all. They're supposed to have passports or proof of residency and national insurance numbers right now. Well, those guys who get off a small boat and one day later are working for Deliveroo in Folkestone or wherever, they haven't got a national insurance number, so it won't make any difference to illegal working. Illegal working will continue as it always has done. But their justification for this massively un-British assault on our traditional liberty, you know, a papers, please dystopia. Make no mistake, the police will ask you for this card if they stop you. Their justification for this is there is growing public support for government-issued digital IDs. This petition, which was started last Thursday night when soon after Keir Starmer announced this massively unpopular initiative, it is deeply, profoundly unpopular. The petition launched then, it's an official government petition, is a phenomenon. It soared past 2.5 million today and rising. There isn't growing public support for this hideous assault on our freedom. There is growing public furious opposition, right?
So you and I may actually have some disagreement on this. I'm going to be properly consistent on this because I have written an article fairly recently for the Telegraph in which I say that digital ID cards can be a good thing, but here's the most important bit: not under this government. I live in a country which uses ID cards, digital ID cards, and I just don't have a problem with it here where I am. At no point have I found it anything other than actually quite helpful and in many ways very reassuring. And I wrote in my piece that what this means is that someone can come into your home and, you know, fix a dripping tap or carry out some other repair, and you can quite easily leave them in your property and not worry whatsoever that they're going to steal anything, because they all know that if anything disappears, you've got their ID, their employer has their ID, and they will quickly be traced. But that's in this society. That is not in the UK under this totally blundering government and a culture in the UK of jobs worthery. And can you imagine how this would be overreached. Can you just imagine the little clipboard people with a little bit of authority just going so over the top? The horrors of COVID taught us that if you give the British state, too much power, they just cannot possibly keep things in proportion. And we already see overreach in so many areas. And I simply don't trust our institutions and the people that work for them to do this properly. And actually, do you know what? I just don't see it happening. I think there is so much opposition to it. Exactly. I don't think it's popular. My position is not a fashionable one. I wouldn't have held this position had I not lived in a country which actually uses them properly. And I cannot see it happening. It's just not going to work, is it?
The level of antipathy around the country towards this, as I said earlier, is literally phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. It's
People
something.
hate it.
There's something. It's just something profoundly un-British. We are not a papers please society, and we never will be. And if Starmer carries forward with this, it will be his poll tax. People will rise up against it. They really, really will.
It basically only works in a society where there is already total control. Where there is already real efficiency, where everything is already so well organised. And you can't just sort of slap this on to our totally chaotic society in which there are probably, I don't know how many, perhaps 1 million people who shouldn't be in the UK. How is this going to work? I just don't see it.
Doesn't make any difference. I mean, there's already a system by which people are not supposed to be able to work unless they have the right documentation, as in, proof of residency and also, of course, your national insurance number. So just adding to that list with these digital ID cards, it's rubbish. This is about socialist control. That's what it is. It's about socialist control. That's what Tony Blair's obsessed with it. He's been obsessed with it for years. They want control over us. But, here's one thing I will say, I'll pay a compliment to this government now, is that, the little people around the country, we're all so stupid, and we can't really understand things like digital ID cards, can we? So our gratitude to Keir Starmer's new sidekick. I don't know what his official title is, that awful little man. What's his name? Darren Jones. Here he is. This is the guy, by the way, who thinks that the vast majority of migrants coming across the Channel are women and children, as opposed to 75% of them being young men of military age. Anyway, here's Darren. Darren Explains. Here we are. Shut up. I mean, talk about infantilising us. I mean, how old are we? 3 years old? What on earth is that about? And by the way, if you must put out some intelligence-insulting video like that, Darren Explains. It's not exactly, particularly rolling off the tongue, is it? It's not very alliterative, is it? Useless and insulting. What on earth do they think they're doing?
I think it's more like Darren depresses, isn't it?
Yeah. Darren's diktat.
Is there anything more depressing than that bloke telling us that? I mean, again, who are these people in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office that are letting these bits of communication go out? I don't know why they're being paid. Yeah. They are kind of like a reverse publicity machine, just kind of making everything worse. Yeah,
you just want to say, don't you, when you, my name's Darren Jones, I'm Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. You just go, yeah, of course you are.
Yeah,
Darren Explains. Let me explain to you, Darren. Just do one. Don't insult our intelligence with that nonsense, that claptrap.
In the bin.
In the bin. Yes, exactly.
Get in the bin.
Right, let's go to break and let's talk about a very serious story when we come back. The incredible news that the NHS, our health service, is backing first cousin marriages. These are the marriages favoured particularly by the Pakistani Muslim community, but by Muslims around the world, including here. They're not illegal, but I think they should be. They're dangerous. So we'll talk about that next. Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, I had a text from Patrick in Gedling. He says, Isabel is so professional, composed and patient. She obviously knows Kevin very well. I don't know what that means. I think it means that you handle my madness with greater aplomb.
I love your madness. You know, this is what makes me feel less alone in the world. You know, when and some our listeners won't know that sometimes I just feel the need to share something with Kev during the day on WhatsApp or, you know, on email, and it's usually with capital letters going, "Can you believe this thing?"
Yeah,
you know, it's all so bonkers, isn't it? Do you remember, I don't know whether they still do it, the Daily Mail used to have this kind of little stamp that they put on stories, which said something like, you know, the world's going mad or something. But the thing is, I think we had to give it up because the whole paper would be covered.
Yeah, exactly right. I always said that. It is the sort of unofficial slogan of this show that I don't use enough, but it's stop the madness. I mean, the madness that we are assailed by every day in every way, you know, it's sometimes funny. It's usually extremely worrying, as in this case. We're going to talk about the NHS incredibly backing first cousin marriages, a system that's very common among the British Pakistani community, common among Muslims around the world. You may remember this. This is the MP for Dewsbury and Batley, Iqbal Mohammed. He spoke in the House of Commons not so long ago in favour of this practice of first cousin marriage, which definitively, scientifically, is far more likely to deliver babies with birth defects than marriages between people who aren't first cousins. So it should be banned, really. But this is Iqbal Mohammed, I think it's about a year ago.
We should try to step into the shoes of those who perhaps are not from the same culture as ours, to better understand why the practice continues to be so widespread. An estimated 35 to 50% of all sub-Saharan African populations either prefer or accept cousin marriages, and it is extremely common in the Middle East and in South Asia. I would therefore urge the House to vote against this motion and to find a more positive approach to addressing the issues that are caused by first cousin marriages.
Oh, well, if it's popular in the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa, let's get on board. In actual fact, what he was doing there, he was opposing a proposal by the Tories to outlaw first cousin marriages. The statistics are alarming. Up to 20% of the children treated for congenital problems in cities like Sheffield, Glasgow and Birmingham are of Pakistani descent, compared with 4% or lower in the wider population. In fact, the general statistic is this, that a kid being born of intermarriage, as they call it, first cousin parent marriages, is around the chances of being born with a birth defect, a genetic condition, is around 2 to 3%. If the parents are not first cousins, it's 4 to 6%. So if you have first cousin marriages, you have your kid is twice as likely to suffer from birth defects than any other kid, and yet the NHS England's Genomics education programme says that intermarriage offers benefits which include stronger extended family support systems and economic advantages, and that banning this practice would stigmatise certain communities and cultural traditions. The authorities should instead offer genetic counselling, awareness-raising initiatives and public health campaigns. So they are prioritising a kind of wokery towards our Pakistani Muslim community over the welfare of children, who are being born at quite a rate with birth defects. We should just ban this. We should outlaw this practice. And what on earth is the NHS doing backing it?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually very simple as far as I'm concerned. I really don't give a monkey's what goes on in other countries. What we're talking about here in Parliament and with the NHS is what goes on in our own country. And this type of whatever you call it, inter-family marriage, or whatever it is, has no place whatsoever in the UK. All the evidence shows that, as you've just set out very clearly there, that it very significantly raises the risks of health problems and birth defects. And that isn't a price that anyone should be willing to pay. It's not for the NHS to be talking and lecturing about economic advantages and community cohesion. That isn't their job. Their job is to protect and promote health. And this quite clearly doesn't. And I think it would send a really clear message, actually, out to those so-called communities that the NHS is talking about, that actually, you know what, you're in Britain and this is not how we do things in the UK.
Yeah, and this NHS England's genomics education programme goes on to sort of say, well, yeah, you know, sure, it does increase the risk of birth defects, but, you know, so does, shall we say, parents who are a bit too old, or, you know, because they're, you know, advanced in age. So does smoking. So does alcohol use, and some assisted reproductive technologies. Well, what's that got to do with it? What's that got to do with it? What we have here is a definite scientific fact that if first cousins get married, the chances of their kids, their babies, suffering from birth defects, often serious birth defects, are twice the chance of other parents delivering babies with birth defects. Twice. That is serious, and the NHS should be railing against it, not trying desperately to come up with reasons to support it, which are just cultural and woke. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you know, smoking in pregnancy and drinking in pregnancy and all these things, as they say, are very bad and dangerous. But marriage is a legal institution, one which involves the machinery of the state. You know, whether people smoke or drink too much when they're pregnant is not a legal matter. You know, we don't outlaw those things because it would be impossible to police behind closed doors. But the state can and absolutely does decide whether it can or can't marry people. So in every way, the state has a place in deciding what is and what isn't legitimate. You know, what next? Are they going to say in certain communities maybe it's okay to marry your sibling? I mean, I don't know, but if it's a cousin, you know, why not take it a bit further? I think this is completely unacceptable, and you know, you've just got to look at it from the point of view of the offspring. It isn't good for society, and I don't get this whole, you know, thing about economic advantages or whatever. There's no economic advantages in birth defects or being ill.
Absolutely not. Isabel, great to have you back. You'll be on the show throughout the week. We will talk again soon. That is the brilliant Talk International editor, Isabel Oakeshott.